Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, we're reading from Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text 38. Chapter is the first step in God realization. I got a bit of hay fever.
Well, or cold, because the weather's changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
A minute ago it was warm, not enough to put my scarf on. We'll say the
invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I have thus explained to you the gross material gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has verily explained that the material nature is only an order-carrying agent of His. She is one of the different potencies of the Lord, and she acts under His direction only. As the Supreme Transcendental Lord, He simply casts a glance over the material principle, and thus the agitation of matter begins, and the resultant actions are manifested one after another by 6 kinds of gradual differentiations. All material creation is moving in that way, and thus it appears and disappears in due course.
Less intelligent persons with a poor fund of knowledge cannot accommodate the thought of this inconceivable potency of Lord Shri Krishna, by which He appears just like a human being. Bhagavad Gita 9:11. His appearance in the material world as one of us is also His causeless mercy upon the fallen souls. He is transcendental to all material conceptions, but by His unbounded mercy upon His pure devotees, He comes down and manifests Himself as the personality of Godhead. Materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engrossed with atomic energy and the gigantic situation of the universal form, and they offer respect more seriously to the external phenomenon feature of material manifestations than to the nominal principle of spiritual existence. The transcendental form of the Lord is beyond the jurisdiction of the materialistic activities, and it is very difficult to conceive that the Lord can be simultaneously localized and all-pervasive, because the materialistic philosophers and scientists think of everything in terms of their own experience. Because they are unable to accept the personal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Lord is kind enough to demonstrate the Virat feature of His transcendental form, and herein Srila Shukadeva Swami has vividly described this form of the Lord. He concludes that there is nothing beyond this gigantic feature of the Lord. None of the materialistic thoughtful men can go beyond this conception of the gigantic form. The minds of the materialistic men are flickering and constantly changing from one aspect to another. Therefore, one is advised to think of the Lord by thinking of any part of His gigantic body, and by one's intelligence one can think of Him in any manifestation of the material world: the forest, the hill, the ocean, the man, the animal, the demigod, the bird, the beast, or anything else. And read.
Each and every item of the material manifestation entails a part of the body of their gigantic form, and thus the flickering mind can be fixed in the Lord only and nothing else. This process of concentrating on the different bodily parts of the Lord will gradually diminish the demoniac challenge of godlessness and bring about gradual development of devotional service to the Lord. Everything being a part and parcel of the complete whole, the neophyte student will gradually realize the hymns of the Ishopanishad, which state that the Supreme Lord is everywhere, and thus he will learn the art of not committing any offense to the body of the Lord. This sense of God-mindedness will diminish one's pride in challenging the existence of God. Thus one can learn how to show respect to everything, for all things are parts and parcels of the Supreme Body.
Text 39. One should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes Himself in so many manifestations. just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on Him, the only all-blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. Purport. In this verse, the process of devotional service is indicated by the great Goswami Srila Shukadeva. He tries to impress upon us that instead of diverting our attention to several branches of self-realization, we should concentrate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the supreme object of realization, worship, and devotion. Self-realization is, as it were, offering a fight for external life against the material struggle for existence. And therefore, by the illusory grace of the external energy, the yogi or the devotee is faced with many allurements which can entangle a great fighter again in the bondage of material existence. A yogi can attain miraculous success in material achievements such as anima and lagima, by which one can become more minute than the minutest or lighter than the lightest, or in ordinary sense one may achieve material benedictions in the shape of wealth and women. But one is warned against such allurements, because entanglement again in such illusory pleasure means degradation of the self, and further imprisonment in the material world. By this warning, one should follow one's vigilant intelligence only.
The Supreme Lord is one, and His expansions are various. He is therefore the supersoul of everything. When a man sees anything, he must know that his seeing is secondary and the Lord's seeing is primary. One cannot see anything without the Lord's having first seen it. That is the instruction of the Vedas and the Upanishads. So whatever we see or do, the supersoul of all acts of seeing or doing is the Lord. This theory of simultaneous oneness and difference between the individual soul and the supersoul is propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a philosophy of Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. The Virat Rupa, or the gigantic feature of the Supreme Lord, includes everything materially manifested. And therefore the Virat, or gigantic feature of the Lord, is the supersoul of all living and non-living entities. But the Virat Rupa is also the manifestation of Narayan or Vishnu. And going further on and on, one will eventually see that Lord Krishna is the ultimate supersoul of everything that be. The conclusion is that one should unhesitatingly become a worshipper of Lord Krishna, but for that matter, his preliminary expansion Narayan and none else.
See, mine didn't have the break there. Excuse me. In the Vedic hymns, it is clearly said that first of all Narayan cast a glance over matter, and thus there was creation. Before creation there was neither Brahma nor Shiva, and what to speak of others. Sripad Shankaracharya has definitely accepted this, that Narayan is beyond the material creation and that all others are within the material creation. The whole material creation therefore is one with and different from Narayan simultaneously, and this supports the Achintya Veda Abheda Tattva philosophy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Being an emanation from the glancing potency of Narayan, the whole material creation is non-different from him, but because it is the effect of his external energy, Bahiranga Maya, and is aloof from the internal potency, Atma Maya, the whole material creation is different from him. At the same time, the example given in this verse very nicely is that of the dreaming man. The dreaming man creates many things in his dream, and thus he himself becomes the entangled seer of the dream, and is also affected by the consequences. This material creation is also exactly a dream-like creation of the Lord, but he, being the transcendental supersoul, is neither entangled nor affected by the reactions of such a dream-like creation. He is always in his transcendental position, but essentially he is everything. and nothing is apart from him. As a part of him, one should therefore concentrate on him only, without deviation. Otherwise, one is sure to be overcome by the potencies of the material creation, one after another. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:7 as follows: Sarva bhutani kunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaya punasthani kalpadao vishrijam yaham. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, every material manifestation enters into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I again create.
The human life, however, is an opportunity to get out of this repetition of creation and annihilation. It is a means whereby one may escape the Lord's external potency and enter into his internal potency. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, first chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The First Step in God Realization.
Oh, okay. So first chapter of the second canto, now completed. Any reflections on what we've just read?
Yeah, I thought it was quite intense. That is so much description into the Virat Rup and this, and because this man's poetry marriage has got 7 days to live, so we just need to get to the essence, really. And I don't want to know about the Virat Rup and this. I need to know the essence so I can go home, because I've been cursed. So I felt that's like, it's not as if I haven't read this, but every time you read Prabhupada's books, it's like you read something new, or another layer is revealed. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, whoa, that's a lot. Where did I miss that before?
There's nothing. There's probably the whole middle chapters of this canto, and the beginning of the third canto is all also about the universal form.
It's too much.
And, well, it's actually explained. The reason for this is that Parikshit Maharaj is aware that there are many different types of sadhus gathered in this assembly, and so is Shukadeva Goswami. And so Parikshit Maharaj, obviously he wants to hear the nectar and the essence, and he wants to hear it from Shukadeva because he's a devotee as well. But it's described that there are many different types of sadhus, and many of them are impersonalists. And the idea is that Shukadeva Goswami is really honing in on this Virat Rupa form because they will accept it, but it's also the first stages, as was mentioned in this chapter, to get an impersonalist to start to accept a form of the Lord.
Yeah, because the chapter's called The First Step in God Realization.
Exactly. So the first step is to at least accept that this entire creation is part of the Lord, and it's part of his Virat Rupa, his universal form, so like that. So there is a lot of time spent, and for devotees, they're kind of like, yeah, let's move on.
Especially if you've got 7 days.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's only 7 days too.
I mean, I don't know how many days I got.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know how much time we have. But at the same time, recently when I was studying this to teach it, then I was thinking how it's actually quite amazing. I mean, we overlook it because we just want to think about Krishna in his, blue cowherd boy form. But this shows that when you look at the forest, you can see the hairs of Krishna's body, and when you see the mountains, that's the bones of Krishna's Virat Rupa form. And the sky is his mind, I think it is, and the sun and the moon are his eyes, and like this, then you can start to try to see Krishna, and the rivers are his veins, and like that. So. Yeah,
and it's true that everyone wants to jump to the pastimes, but in one sense we're not even qualified to be on the first step. Really, to even see the Lord everywhere in material nature. How can you see him on the transcendental plane? Isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, should we go on to chapter
So this is the second step now, the Lord in the heart. Do you understand? Like,
Lord in the heart, Paramatma. So Brahman to Paramatma. Okay, is my turn to read?
Yeah.
So chapter 2, the Lord in the heart. So chapter 2 of second canto. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus, he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. Purport. The example cited herein of Sri Brahmaji is one of forgetfulness. Brahmaji is the incarnation of one of the mundane attributes of the Lord. Being the incarnation of the passion mode of material nature, he is empowered by the Lord to generate the beautiful material manifestation. Yet, due to his being one of the numerous living entities, he is apt to forget the art of his creative energy. This forgetfulness of the living being, beginning from Brahma down to the lowest insignificant ant, is a tendency which can be counteracted by meditation on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This chance is available in the human form of life, and if a human being follows the instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam and begins to meditate upon the Virat Rupa, then revival of his pure consciousness and counteraction of the tendency to forget his eternal relationship with the Lord can follow simultaneously. So this basically just corroborates exactly what we were just saying, that the Bhagavatam, and Shukadeva Goswami in particular, is first just trying to get people to meditate on the Virat Rupa form, and this is the first step in God realization. And as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, because that's the problem of vidya, forgetfulness, the Vyavasaya buddhi, which is also the same as the Vyavasayatmika from Bhagavad Gita, the Vyavasaya buddhi, as mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita 241, follows at once. This ascertained knowledge of the living being leads to loving service to the Lord, which the living being requires. The kingdom of God is unlimited, therefore the number of the assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. The Bhagavad Gita 13:14 asserts that the Lord has his hands, legs, eyes, and mouths in every nook and corner of his creation. This means that the expansions of differentiated parts and parcels called jivas or living entities are assisting hands of the Lord, and all of them are meant for rendering a particular pattern of service to the Lord. The conditioned soul, even in the position of a Brahma, forgets this by the influence of the illusory material energy generated out of false egoism. One can counteract such false egoism by invoking God consciousness. Liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness and becoming situated in the real loving service of the Lord, as exemplified in the case of Brahma. The service of Brahma is the sample of service in liberation, distinguished from the so-called altruistic services full of mistakes and forgetfulness. Liberation is never in action, but service without human mistakes. It's a nice definition of liberation. That's why I highlighted that.
Yeah, that's
Getting
nice.
out of the slumber of forgetfulness and service without human mistakes.
It's not inactive.
Yes,
As
always.
some people think that's when I'm free and I don't have to do anything. But that's when your real busyness starts, isn't it? You keep an eye.
Did you tag me in this? Because it's not coming up.
Yeah. Text 2.
No one's, it says live, but no one's plugging in.
Yeah, a couple of people did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Text 2.
Yep.
The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Purport. The conditioned soul is always engaged in laying out plans for happiness within the material world, even up to the end of the universal limit. He is not even satisfied with available amenities on this planet Earth, where he has exploited the resources of nature to the best of his ability. He wants to go to the moon or the planet Venus to exploit resources there. But the Lord has warned us in the Bhagavad Gita 8:16 about the worthlessness of all the innumerable planets of this universe, as well as those planets within other systems. There are innumerable universes and also innumerable planets in each of them, but none of them is immune to the chief miseries of material existence, namely the pangs of birth, the pangs of death, the pangs of old age, and the pangs of disease. The Lord says that even the topmost planet, known as Brahma Loka or Satya Loka, and what to speak of other planets, that the heavenly planets is not a happy land for residential purposes, due to the presence of material pangs as above mentioned. Conditioned souls are strictly under the laws of fruitive activities, and as such, they sometimes go up to Brahma Loka and again come down to Patala Loka, as if they were unintelligent children on a merry-go-round. The real happiness is in the kingdom of God, where no one has to undergo the pangs of material existence. Therefore, the Vedic ways of fruitive activities for the living entities are misleading. One thinks of a superior way of life in this country or that, or on this planet or another, but nowhere in the material world can he fulfill his real desire of life, namely eternal life, full intelligence and complete bliss. Indirectly, Srila Sukadeva Goswami affirms that Maharaj Parikshit in the last stage of life should not desire to transfer himself to the so-called heavenly planets, but should prepare himself for going back home, back to Godhead. None of the material planets, nor the amenities available there for living conditions, is everlasting. Therefore, one must have a factual reluctance to enjoy such temporary happiness as they afford.
What's that verse saying? The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things, like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness. Now it's hot.
Yeah.
This is a problem. I'm getting sick. Do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Okay. So it's basically saying that most of the Vedas is, like in the Bhagavad Gita explains, that the Vedas deal mainly with the three modes of material natures and trying to direct people to the heavenly spheres. But that's not the ultimate goal. Text 3. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life, while in the world of names. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. It's a heavy one.
In the world of names. Interesting way of putting it.
Where does that come from in the Sanskrit?
Namasu.
Namasu. For this reason, the enlightened person, Namasu, remains in Yana. Minimum. Purport. The Bhagavad Dharma, or the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam, is perfectly distinct from the way of fruitive activities which are considered by the devotees to be merely a waste of time. The whole universe, or for that matter all material existence, is moving on as Jagat, simply for planning businesses to make one's position very comfortable or secure, although everyone sees that this existence is neither comfortable nor secure, and can never become comfortable or secure at any stage of development. Those who are captivated by the illusory advancement of material civilization, following the way of phantasmagoria, are certainly madmen. The whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of the material elements, with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. Since the devotee of the Lord knows them perfectly well, he is not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history. Oh, where does it come up?
There, says that.
Okay, so there is another.
Yeah.
They are forgotten in due course of time, and they make a place for another era in history. But the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. For all you historians out there, the stewardship worker aspires after a big fortune in the matter of wealth, women, and worldly adoration. But those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. For them it is all a waste of time.
Since every second of human life is important, an enlightened man should be very careful to utilize time very cautiously. 1 second of human life wasted in the vain research or planning for happiness in the material world can never be replaced, even if one spends millions of coins of gold. Therefore, the transcendentalist desiring freedom from the clutches of Maya or the illusionary activities of life is warned herewith not to be captivated by the external features of fruitive actors. Human life is never meant for sense gratification but for self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam instructs us solely on this matter, from the very beginning to the end. Human life is simply meant for self-realization. The civilization which aims at this uttermost perfection never indulges in creating unwanted things, and such a perfect civilization prepares men only to accept the bare necessities of life or to follow the principle of the best use of a bad bargain. Our material bodies and our lives in that connection are bad bargains because the living entity is perfectly spirit, and spiritual advancement of the living entity is absolutely necessary. Human life is intended for the realization of this important factor, and one should act accordingly, accepting only the bare necessities of life and depending more on God's gifts without diversion of human energy for any other purpose, such as being mad for material enjoyment. Quite a powerful paragraph.
Is that it?
No. Yeah, and then you.
Yeah, it mentions the bare necessities a few times. Reminds me of the Jungle Book, you know. Bare necessities.
Oh dear.
Where am I? The materialistic
Yeah.
advancement? The materialistic advancement of civilization is called the civilization of the demons, which ultimately ends in wars and scarcity. The transcendentalist is specifically warned herewith to be fixed in mind, so that even if there is difficulty in plain living and high thinking, he will not budge even an inch from his stark determination. Interesting. Let me read that again. The transcendentalist is specifically warned herewith to be fixed in mind, so that even if there is difficulty in plain living and high thinking, he will not budge even an inch from his stark determination. For a transcendentalist, it is a suicide policy to be intimately in touch with the sense gratifiers of the world, because such a policy will frustrate the ultimate gain of life. Shukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit when the latter felt a necessity for such a meeting. It is the duty of a transcendentalist to help persons who desire real salvation and to support the cause of salvation. One might note that Shukadeva Swami never met Maharaj Parikshit while he was ruling as a great king. For a transcendentalist, the mode of activities is explained in the next shloka. I think let's call it a day there. But any last points? This last paragraph that I read is interesting. It mentions that it's a suicidal policy to be in touch with sense gratifiers because it frustrates the ultimate goal, spoils it. And Shukadeva Goswami only contacted Maharaj Parikshit when he was ready to renounce.
Yes, Prabhupada says the master will come when the disciple is ready. You say like that when people are seeking a spiritual master.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder, if anyone out there is interested in getting copies, we did have one very kind-hearted person who contacted us, who was inspired
By the reading.
by the reading, and
He snapped up 28 copies.
28 copies.
That is not a lie.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
This limited edition.
This limited edition, yeah. Just so it's clear, this is a limited edition for the 50th anniversary. We only got, I forget how many.
50.
No, we didn't get 50. It's not that limited, but yeah, he got 28. Not like that, but they are limited. We only have a few thousand. I mean, and now many of them are gone, so it's into the hundreds that are left. So if you're interested, let us know. We'll get you some.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Srila
Thank
Prabhupada
you.
Ki Jai.